Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are entering our first session of March lecture, Tuesday night at the LA Chess Club. And as you know, the topic for this month is tactics. So since this is an advanced class, I don't talk about basic tactical rules or even tactical themes. Generally, there are 8 major tactics in chess, as I'm sure most of you, all of you know. They are, in terms of occurrence, fork, pin, skewer, double attack, removing the guard, overloading, deflection, and decoy. And there are 15 minor tactical themes that they don't happen as often, but for a good tactical player, he ought to know what they are too. There are like advanced pawn, sacrifice, exposed king, back rank mate, blocking, Zugzwang, Zwischenzug, and clearance, and a few other more. So I figured it would be fitting to go over some of the great tactical games in history tonight. There are probably about a dozen games that really stand out in history as far as fantastic tactics are concerned in a chess game. I'm hoping to go over 2 of them tonight. Both happen to be from Adolf Anderssen, one of the greatest chess players in history of chess. This was played in 1851. It's famous as the Immortal game. He played it so fantastically that it has a nickname of the Immortal game. This was played against a player named Lionel Kaiseritsky. This was in London, 1851. The opening was King's Gambit. So Adolf Anderssen was white. He opened with e4. Pretty good move. Already occupies one of the 4 central squares, controlling d5, f5. And according to Bobby Fischer, best by test. Some of the most ferocious attacking players in history, they always open with e4. Fischer, Kasparov, Shirov, Tal. And according to Emanuel Lasker, second world champion, if black wants to equalize immediately, he should play either e5 or c5. He considered these 2 as the best moves for black on move 1. In this game, Kaiseritsky played e5. And white continued with f4. This is King's Gambit opening. It used to be extremely popular, not as popular these days anymore. During the Romanticist era of chess, which was 1800s, this was very popular. And if you are a beginner intermediate, I recommend you experiment with this opening. It's a gambit. White is often a gambit pawn on the king's side of the board. So there's a lot of attack in this line by both sides. Usually in a king's gambit, there are no draws. Somebody will win. And since white has the advantage of the first move, obviously it favors white. So the good rule of thumb when it comes to gambits is if you're not sure how to play against it, accept the gambit. So in this game, black accepted. This is the position. The reason you don't see King's Gambit anymore these days is one idea is called Falkbeer Gambit. Black plays a gambit of his own, and a central pawn, and immediately opens both bishop diagonals. This is one of the lines that you could say is a refutation of King's Gambit. Another one is pawn takes pawn, and if white plays knight f3, which is one of the 2 major moves, either knight f3 or bishop c4, black plays d5. Again, black immediately opens up his d and e files. And of course, if pawn takes pawn, black plays bishop d6 and holds on to his f pawn. So it's a perfectly good line to play for black. In this game, black accepted the pawn, and this is the position. Like I said, knight f3, in order to prevent the queen h4 check, is a major move. Another move is bishop c4. I used to play King's Gambit quite a bit in my youth. It really sharpens your tactics. And I used to play knight f3 every move on move 3. After a while, I preferred bishop c4. Bishop c4 seems to be not good because of this queen check by black. And what would white do on this queen check? g3 is not good because pawn takes pawn. He cannot take back. Rook is hanging. So if black plays queen h4 check now, white simply plays king f1. So what's so good about this for white? He lost his castling privilege. He's a pawn down. But black has already made a couple of violations of the openings. He moved the e-pawn twice. He moved the queen out early, right? And it's just a matter of a couple of moves later on. Knight f3, kick the queen, and d4, and better position for white. And that's what happened in this game. So they used to be thinking that the refutation of bishop c4 is queen h4 check. We'll see in this game if this is really refutation or not. It's black to play, and the same premise that happens in all gambits, which is sacrificing a pawn to keep your opponent busy moving the same developed pawns and pieces over and over, black is trying to do that against white by playing b5. Objectively, this cannot be a good move. The only point of this move is to divert the white bishop off the a2 g8 diagonal to take this pawn, and it probably is going to take him another move to bring it back. In the meantime, black can bring his pieces out quickly. Again, you're not sure, somebody sacrificed a pawn, how to treat it? Accept it. So white took the pawn, and black played knight f6. Okay, finally black made a reasonable developing move, knight f6. And of course, the move for white, knight f3, attacking the queen. So one of the points of black sacrificing a pawn on b5 square is that black was thinking, okay, if he attacks me with knight f3, which eventually he would, well, obviously I'm going to save the queen and at the same time attack that bishop. So white has to worry about that bishop. In the meantime, I develop more pieces, maybe even knight takes pawn next. I'm sorry, black played queen h6, trying to hold on to this pawn. So white played d3. He could have played d4 too, but then he probably would have lost the e-pawn. d3 is simple and good, and this pawn is under attack once for now. So black made another violation of the opening. He only has a couple of pieces out. He should bring another piece out. Bishop b7, knight c6, even bishop a6 would have been a good developing move. But he went and tried to create a mid-game combination in opening. That's the biggest mistake of the low-rated players. They play mid-game ideas in the opening phase of the game. In the opening, you just should worry about getting the pieces out as quickly as possible. And of course, with this, he does create a threat, knight g3, forking the king and a rook, and winning the rook. So it's white to play. And how should white deal with this? There are many different ways he could play. King g1 is tempting, and obviously not knight here check because pawn takes. But trouble with king g1 is queen b6, checking the king and winning the bishop. So that's out. So white does not have an easy way of dealing with this knight check. What do you think he should do?
Oh, queen to e1.
Okay, queen e1 is one way.
Yeah.
Right, that deals with a threat.
Right.
But can't black check anyway?
Queen takes knight.
Queen takes knight, and if pawn takes,
right,
bishop
and
takes
bishop
queen.
takes queen.
But that'd be trade, right?
Yeah. Isn't
Okay.
that okay?
It's okay, but white found a brilliant way to deal with that check. He played knight h4. Now obvious the check is no good, he just wins the knight. Black to play, queen g5. Obviously white had anticipated this move. And this queen g5 is an example of double threat. All of a sudden, the only white developed pieces, those two minor pieces, are hanging. So what is white's only move here? So he wouldn't lose a piece.
Knight f5.
Knight f5, the only move, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's safe for now. It's black to play, and obviously this game could have improved on the black side. Otherwise, he would not have been on the receiving end of this brilliancy. But here, black played c6. Black is making a lot of pawn moves. Even bishop a6 developing a piece would have been preferable. c6 threatening knight. It is white to play. What should he do? If he brings the bishop back to c4, black will play d5, and white doesn't have pawn takes pawn because this knight would fall. That means he will have to retreat the bishop to b3. And black gets his pieces out. He could play, for example, bishop takes knight next, and black would be comfortable. So this is when you see the position not going your way, you think alternatively. Look at plan B or other plans. So here, white completely ignored the fact that his bishop is under attack.
Queen h4.
He played g4. He took advantage of the fact that black would not do en passant. His pawn is pinned. And with this move, he attacked the black knight. So what should black do? Black saved the knight. Now this pawn is hanging, and that bishop on b5 is hanging. Is white in trouble?
Now h4.
Black was obsessed with winning material. But there's a lot more to chess. When you violate some of the opening principles, two moves with this pawn, several queen moves, several knight moves, you're making some major violation of the opening principles. And there's a price to be paid for that. So white played rook g1 and guarded this pawn. And obviously black was happy to win the bishop on b5. So black played pawn takes bishop. So what do you think is white's strategic idea behind sacrificing a bishop on that side of the board? And that bishop is often one of the deadliest white piece on the chessboard, white square bishop. He's taken advantage of the fact that queen is very few squares around here, and he only has really a couple of squares to go to. So now he played h4. What's the only square that queen has?
G6.
Queen g6. And he gained even more space by attacking the queen again. And of course, if knight takes, pawn takes, and black just lose a piece for a pawn. Not worth it. So black figured nothing wrong with queen g5. You see how he's getting more mileage out of the queen? Okay, now it's just a matter of attacking this pawn one more time, right?
How about queen f3?
Queen f3.
Move played, excellent. Queen f3, and after bishop takes f4, black queen has nowhere to go, right? So,
He should move his knight. So
right.
So he has a square.
So you find the square for the queen to go to. It's black to play. He only has two pieces developed, and he just undeveloped one of them. The only square. So his queen could escape. Knight back to g8, and of course white played bishop takes f4. Okay, how many moves queen has made so far? Too many.
Yeah, a lot.
So queen went to f6. It's already too late for black, but you could say maybe queen d8 would have been a better square, to retreating square. But he is having an eye on winning more material, b2 pawn. Black is already a piece up. He wants more. So the number one rule of development in the opening is getting the pieces out quickly. Knight c3. It's moments like this that black really has to figure out what is the most active piece or developing piece to play. Here black played bishop c5. Black is just obsessed with winning material. He created another threat on the rook. White is having an idea of checkmating black. Black is having an idea of winning more and more material. Can anybody suggest a great move at this point for white?
G5.
Okay, g5 is perfectly playable move. So queen is going to go somewhere. Let's say queen c6, for example.
Knight d5?
Knight
What
d5.
about Knight b5. Knight takes pawn at b5.
Okay.
Because if the queen takes b2, you're going to check, take the a rook, give them that, king up, and the other rook is protected.
Knight d5 played.
Okay.
The point of knight d5 is that, as opposed to knight b5, is that it controls e7 and f6 one more time. And you see the point of this as the game goes on. Knight d5, and of course, black won another pawn. Queen takes b2. So as white develops his minor pieces to more and more active squares, black is busy winning material. The moves that white has played so far, they're good, they're okay. But this next move is the only double exclam move of the game. And it's extremely hard to see. In my teenage years, I had a habit of going over great games and hide the moves of the winner and try to guess the moves. I missed this one. Maybe you guys can do a better job. For those of you who have not seen this game, this is a great test of your tactics.
Check.
Rook e1, perfectly reasonable move, and that's what any master would do. But that was not the move.
So if he wants to trap the king, maybe bishop c7, keep the king stuck where it is.
Okay, let's say you play bishop c7, and black plays queen takes rook check.
Well, you have to move the king out.
Right. Probably king e2, and queen takes g1, winning both rooks. And if you don't have a checkmate, it's pretty much over. So there has to be a forced mate. As you see, this bishop, black's bishop on c5, is doing a good job of defending some key light, dark squares, right? So that is a big hint to find a great move.
So if he wants to trade it off, then it's bishop e3 to trade off that bishop. Or bishop e6.
Think forward instead of backward.
Knight e6 check.
So it's bishop e6 or bishop c7. It has to be one of the two squares.
There are several good moves, but there is only one brilliant one.
Let's stick with c7.
Bishop d6. I mean, knight at bishop d6.
Bishop d6. Okay.
Pawn to d4.
Pawn to d4 is also reasonable. There are several good moves at this point. The move is bishop d6. For the mere fact that black cannot afford to take it, because if bishop takes, knight takes, king f8, queen f7 mate, and if king d8, queen takes f7, forced move, forced checkmate next move, no matter what. Either at e8, and if the knight comes out, on e7. So black cannot afford to take the bishop. But his bishop is hanging. What should he do? Black managed to win another rook. Bishop takes g1. Okay, so white's minor pieces have gotten as close as they could possibly get to the black king. But the coup de grace is still not possible. Sometimes it helps to think wishfully in chess in order to find tactics. If I could make 2 moves in a row, would I have a checkmate? Okay, make 2 moves in a row and see if you can find a checkmate.
I found it.
What is it?
Pawn to e5, knight takes g7, just c7.
Very good. Cut off the queen access to g7 square e5, and then this is made in 2. Knight check, king d8 the only move, bishop c7 checkmate. But would you think your opponent would let you play 2 moves in a row? Not likely. But you'll be surprised how effective it is, and even though you cannot make 2 moves in a row, it actually works. So white did play e5. And again, mate threat is in the air. The queen is no longer defending g7 square. It is black to play, and what should black do? When you can capture a major piece with check, that's extremely tempting. So that's what black did. Queen takes rook check, king e2, a light square. And now all black has to do, there's no way he can defend g7. But if somehow controls c7 squared that white is hoping to checkmate with the bishop at the end, he seems to be okay.
So he played knight a6?
Knight a6. So white has knight check, but after king d8, there's no bishop mate. So black solved that problem. There would be no checkmate on c7. But there are other checkmates possible. So without making any moves in this position, can somebody see mate in 3 by white? You saw it? Okay. Let's give a chance to the mortals. White to play mate in 3. By the way, since you guys are in advanced class, I might as well mention this. In order to solve a puzzle, mate in 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever number, you follow 3 steps. And this way, if you follow it, you will be able to solve any puzzle. First, you look at all the checks. In terms of forcefulness, checks are the most forceful moves in chess. If that doesn't solve it, you look at all the captures. That's the second most forceful move in chess. And if it still doesn't solve it, you look at all the threats you could create. But the first step solves this. Just 3 checks in a row, and the last one is checkmate.
Knight takes g7.
Knight takes g7. Black's only move is king d8. And then how do we have mate in 2?
Yeah, good question.
How many of you have seen this game before? Okay, thanks for not mentioning the winning moves. I'm sure you know what they are. And Armand already found it. Had you seen this game before? Okay. So this
I've seen it, but I don't remember at all.
You don't remember? Okay. We believe you. In order to solve a puzzle, it's best not to move any pieces. I know it's very tempting to make the first move. It would be easier, no doubt. But to correctly solve a puzzle without touching any pieces, try to see the whole thing through and say, okay, I got it. Mate in 3 by white. First move is fairly obvious, knight g7, king d8. So in your mind, move white knight to g7, move the black king to d8, and see if you can visualize mate in 2.
Well, I was thinking that, but he said it was all checks in a row, so.
Who said?
You said it was all checks.
Right, they all checks.
Yeah, so if queen takes f7 after the check doesn't work, then that's not check.
It will win the game.
Yeah, it would win the game, but
Another way of winning.
Exactly.
It would
yeah.
prolong it a little bit.
Yeah, so that it's not the.
So White won brilliant way, even though knight g7, king d8, queen takes f7 would have won the game too.
Right.
But he did it a little bit
That I do
differently.
see, but
Hmm?
Queen f6 check.
Queen f6 check. Very good. You and Armand both found it.
that's good. Okay.
Check.
Yeah.
King here. What kind of tactical theme white is taking advantage of? This queen f6 is what kind of tactical theme?
Decoy.
Sacrifice is one of the 15 minor tactical themes, but he had this one is a little bit more specific.
Deflection.
Deflection. You see, the knight is guarding e7 square against bishop e7 before queen came here, right? But now with this check, what is the only black move here?
Knight takes.
Knight takes. Knight after taking is no longer
Guarding
Defend-
E7.
defending e7, and after this,
Bishop e7. Right?
bishop e7. So what is so fascinating about this game? This game was played in the height of Romanticist era of chess in late 1800s. Back then, if you could sacrifice pieces and checkmate your opponent, wow. And what did white sacrifice?
2 rooks and a queen.
And a bishop on b5. So it is not very often that you see somebody sacrificing all 3 major pieces and still winning the game. We probably have less than a dozen games in the entire chess literature that are from famous players that we know of that somebody sacrifices all 3 major pieces and still end up winning. Can anybody recall another game that somebody sacrificed all 3 major pieces and still end up winning?
3 major.
Maybe that was that Morphe game that you showed us.
Morphy has had example. I don't remember who he played, but Alkan has one amazingly brilliant game against Bogolyubov in a world championship match that he sacrificed 2 rooks and a queen, and the third sacrifice was with check. That was an amazing game. We're going to go over that game this month, next week also. Beautiful game. So that was the end of this game. Hope you enjoyed it.
Wow.
This game was so brilliantly played. At the time of this game, there was no World Chess Federation. So Adolf Anderssen was not officially recognized as the world champion. But he, along with many other players, like Zukertort, like Morphy, are known as the unofficial world champions of chess. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. And we have another game.